and welcome to tonight's regular February board meeting of the Vestavia Board of Education. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda, which is displayed on the screen. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next order of business is to approve the minutes of the February 16th meeting that have been distributed. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second? Are there any corrections to the minutes or discussion about it? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I now turn the meeting over to Dr. Mason to begin the administrative report.
Thank you. We're pleased to have some students with us tonight who've recently been recognized for some excellence in art, and Jane Marie Marlin is going to recognize the students.
Each year we select students, student artwork to represent our district at the State Superintendent's Art event in the spring. And we have several students who are here tonight and others who were not with us tonight, but some of who might have been able to join us. So if I call your name later and you're here, we're so happy that you're here. We're grateful that the teachers that helped us make these decisions about who our representatives would be, and I'm sure some of those individuals will join us as well. We were fortunate enough to take some photographs before we sent the artwork to Montgomery to be judged, and I will call each student. If you'll just come forward and stand until we finish with the whole group. This is a Markers in Tangle design by Julia James. Julia, are you with us? Julia is a second grader at Vestavia Hills Elementary East, and her teacher is Bobby McDonald. The next piece is an untitled art piece by Bradford Williams. Is Bradford here tonight? Bradford is a fifth grader at Vestavia Hills Elementary Liberty Park, and her teacher is Melissa Gilmore. Our next young artist, the piece is called Mr. Cow, and the artist is Jillian Roller. Jen? He is a first grader at Vestavia Hills Elementary, Cahaba Heights, and his teacher is Katie Hicks. Our next young artist, Yellow Sunflowers. The artist is Elizabeth Aaron. Is Elizabeth here tonight? Second grader at Vestavia Hills Elementary West, and her teacher is Jamie Cole. Vulcan by Justin Zoe. Justin is a fifth grader at Vestavia Hills Elementary Central. The next artist is Blanca Parga. Her piece is called Red Fox. And she is a 10th grader at the high school, and her teacher is Eleanor Rushing, and she was awarded the honorable mention at the State Superintendent's Visual Art Exhibit. The next piece is called My Sister Alla, and the artist is Max Bundy. Is Max here tonight? Max is an 8th grader at Liberty Park Middle School, and his teacher is Shay Gosnell. The next students are ones we did not get an RSVP from, but if you're here, please come forward as we show your artwork. Together is that piece of art, and the artist is Anthony Cassidy. Is Anthony with us? He's an 8th grader at Louise Pizitz Middle School. His teacher is Larry Gibson. The next piece of art that represented our district was a piece called Temple by Haley Manikadis. Is she with us tonight? She is a 12th grader at the high school. Her teacher is Laura Ann Daly. The next piece is Bug by Lauren Stars. Is she with us tonight? And her teacher, she's a 12th grader, and her teacher is Ennis Everett. The next piece is Conte. Ginger Lavinia. Is Ginger with us tonight? She is also a 12th grader at the high school. Her teacher is Ms. Everett. And the final student is a mixed media art piece done by Elizabeth Lynn. Is Elizabeth here tonight? And she is a 9th grader at the high school, and her teacher is also Ms. Everett. So join me in congratulating these young artists.
Students, congratulations. We're really proud of you and thank your teachers for all they do to help you excel in this area. The next item on our agenda tonight relates to the proposed purchase of Gresham Elementary School. As with buying any property, it's important that we know what we're getting. So we have asked Latham and Associates Architects to do the due diligence report on Gresham Elementary to be sure we know exactly what we're getting into, what we're about to buy, hopefully. And I'll just tell you, the students, I know some of you are here from government class to observe how government functions, and you maybe could have picked a better meeting because the law requires us to go through this and read every page. So, you know, we're going to be here for a while, but you're going to learn a lot. Just kidding. Okay. So, so anything less than an hour will seem like a bargain, right? Okay. You'll deserve it. Okay. So Sean and Brennan, whoever's going to do it. Okay. Sean Calvin from Latham Associates Architects.
Good evening. Contrary to what Dr. Mason said, we're not going to go through every page of the assessment. What the assessment in general contains is, and I have my engineers here as well, each discipline represented to answer any specific questions you may have. The assessment is a general facilities assessment for Gresham, and it lists in here our opinions of each of the pod buildings at the Gresham facility, and it also lists or has within it any reports, old documentation of the building, original drawings from the 1966 building up until the recent renovation done for Jefferson County Schools in I believe it was 2007 is when that was done. And I think what we'll do is kind of start at a high level of what our opinions were. The first order of business, is there anything about the building that would make, that would be a deal breaker? And the answer to that is no. And the reason I say that, and again at a high level, really general, is the building is in good shape. There are parts of the building that are 50 years old, but it was fully renovated in the 2007 interior renovation of that building. Which means that from, and I don't want to steal any of the engineer's thunder, but from a life safety and code standpoint, the building is in good shape. The fire alarm system is in very good shape. It was fully sprinklered at the time that it was renovated. And it is currently occupied by Jefferson County Schools as a functioning school. All of the systems work. Now, do some of the components of the building have age on them? Yes, they do. But if you look at the building for what it is used for now and what I believe the intention will be for that building, it very much fits that scenario. So if you would like, I will have each of my engineers give you a small synopsis of what they saw. Would you like me to do that, or would you like to just ask questions that perhaps they could figure?
Just get a synopsis.
Craig, if you would. Craig,
I'll just kind of stand here and address. I'm a structural engineer and walked the building and looked at it. we were able to kind of grade the structures, and all of the structures that are intended to stay, I think there's one building maybe that was scheduled for demolition, but that was kind of pre-approval. Everything kind of got an A, other than the H. So everything that I could see was in real good structural shape. You got some of the buildings that are older, but I would assume that the lifespan should be just fine. I saw nothing that gave me concern from a structural standpoint.
Adam Cohen with Edmonds Engineering, Mechanical Plumbing and Electrical, or Mechanical Plumbing and Fire Protection.
Correct. So from mechanical plumbing standpoint, kind of broad base, as Sean mentioned, everything is in operational order. Mechanical units are primarily rooftop units, ranging anywhere from 10 to 20 years. I think one of the pods had 10-year-old, and most of the other equipment was close to about 20 years old. But everything looked to be in operational order and working. Same with the plumbing fixtures and the plumbing water heaters. One of the main plumbing water heaters was newly replaced. A little bit of age on some of the piping, but still everything seemed to be in good operational order. The only thing I want to note is the gym was heated and ventilated only, so it's not conditioned.
Sean, I know part of our plans include, an addition. Will we try to tie any of that stuff together, or would those be separate and distinct type of systems?
They will be tied. What we're planning is a pod building, just like is there, and then in future projects, all of those will be connected together physically. But all the systems will be tied to the main building, intercom, and all of lighting, and all of those components will be connected together.
And there's nothing that limits us in what they have currently to how we would tie it together later necessarily.
They're rooftops, but are they controlled a BAS?
I believe, is it local control time? I don't think there was a building.
Yeah, they do it from off-site.
Right.
They do it to main Gresham County,
They do it at Ketona.
Ketona.
All of their 50-something
So
schools.
we'd
are
have to
tied
tie it
together.
into our
So
system.
we'd have to get that and tie back into the local system.
Sean Crawford with Stewart Engineering, electrical engineer.
Electrical, from looking over the school, Sean touched already on the fire alarm system. Each of the separate pod buildings actually has its own panel, and then they're networked together. They have full coverage. Of all the assessments I've ever done, my 20-plus years, I don't think I've ever seen a fire alarm system in better condition than the one I looked at Gresham. It is that up to par and to today's standards. Emergency lighting was the same way as far as the interior of the buildings. They even have motion sensors cut in almost every classroom for energy conservation, things of that nature. The only, everything was in good shape. Some of the original panels from the main service have a little bit of age on them, but everything's still functioning fine, and electrically it's in very, very good shape.
Any other specific questions or items that you'd like to go over? Civil engineering is not here this evening, but from their standpoint, there are some ADA issues that eventually will have to be addressed. We are addressing ADA issues related to classroom addition along with the classroom addition, but until we touch other areas of the site, we won't. There is ground level access from the main drop off to the main building. Again, there are some of the buildings are multi-story. They added elevators in the renovation. So all of those kind of ADA interior access issues have been addressed.
So Sean, we're not required to meet the ADA guidelines, or just grandfather, or what are you saying?
What he was saying is we'll have to address ADA for the building that will be added. Other parts of the site needing things like curb cuts and those types of things. For instance, if we did a project like we're doing at Cahaba Heights, we're addressing all of the ADA issues around the campus of Cahaba Heights at the same time that perhaps don't need ADA at this time. Does that make sense? If you're not touching it, you don't have to.
I'm touching it. That's what David said.
At the possible new addition site, Have we done a geotech survey or anything like that?
Yes, Brendan handled that with geotechnical company, and we have topographic surveys of the entire site as well.
And I think that at one point you had mentioned that the interior, you know, like the classroom space is actually larger than we probably specify in our other schools or new construction that we do, stuff like that. So from a kind of general usage standpoint, you feel like the interior doesn't have to have anything done, it's kind of just ready for us to occupy and
It
roll
really,
it?
yes, it really is. As far as the size, the reason that they're a little larger than you would have in just a rectilinear building is because they're pie-shaped, because the buildings are octagons. So you've got the smallest dimension of the room is what a typical classroom would be, but then it wides out. So within those classrooms, they've got all new millwork, what they call or use as the kindergarten wing. It's all low sinks for that age children. So all of the interior cabinetry, millwork, finishes, ceilings, those kind of things are really, they move out, you begin kind of thing.
And that all looks 10 years old because it was done in '07, as opposed to kind of the stuff that's older is more hidden or system-based, right?
Right, right. They really didn't touch the exterior. It was strictly an interior renovation of that facility and bringing all of those components up to par. Any other questions? Dr. Mason, would you like me to go over anything else?
No, if the board's satisfied, I am.
Okay.
Is it hard to ventilate the gym? Yeah, to put air conditioning in, sorry.
I mean, so, assuming the structure can handle it, we could put rooftop units on it and do it economically.
Right now, David.
I suspect people wouldn't want that. Just a guess.
Alabama and all these. Currently on the roof, and I think what Adam's referring to, there are 4 just ventilation fans. They turn them on, they pull the hot air out. So I think the idea would be we could use those curves for, depending on the structure, to support mechanical units. Anything y'all want to add anything?
Looks good. It really is in good shape, and we didn't see anything alarming in our review of the assessment that couldn't be addressed over time, and everything seems to be well maintained by their staff and maintenance staff.
And I would just ask Mr. Boone, I believe this is the last task that we needed to complete to be ready to move forward toward closing.
It is.
If the Jefferson County Facilities Plan is approved. So I think we've ticked off all the things that we could do in advance of that, and now we're ready to move once that approval occurs.
One last question. I know that we've had some struggles with capacity in the cafeteria as we've added on schools, and then we've had to go back and increase the cafeteria space. Would this cafeteria accommodate the addition with students that we would put on, or would we need to kind of address that simultaneously?
I believe it would, because it is actually, it's in the center of the building. They called it a commons at one area. And there was an area next to it that had folding walls and was more multi-purpose kind of. That cafeteria expanded into that, and so they've taken into account, size and seems to work capacity.
And remind us, Sean, when was that cafeteria renovated?
It was renovated in 2007.
Seven as well.
Now, the kitchen, they just kind of did finishes. Nothing was expanded or anything. So they did a new floor in the serving area. The floor in the cafeteria is terrazzo, and it's in good shape. It's not usually those types of floors that are exposed, you'll see a lot of cracking. There really wasn't a whole lot of cracking on that. And the 1966 building, Craig and I were kind of there's not a whole lot of cracks in the walls, and usually you'll see hairlines, but there really wasn't a lot of that.
Thank you. Now, Brennan from HPM is going to provide an overview of all of our construction.
All right, been a lot going on since the last time I gave you an update, which I think was a few months ago. I'll focus on the projects we have ongoing, a few that just bid this past month that are on the agenda for this evening, and then just give you updates on some projects in design stages. The first project is the Classroom Edition, Media Center Edition at Cahaba Heights. In this project right now, still coming out of the ground, getting CMU block up, have poured all of the slab on grade surfaces, have poured the elevated slab on the Classroom Edition portion of this building, working on the elevated slab on the Media Center Edition portion of this building. So coming up with CMU to get ready for that second floor pour on Media Center, and coming up with CMU to the roof level on the Classroom Edition. So heading towards getting that building fully topped out to put a roof on it. Then we'll move to MEP rough ends ongoing. Structural steel will be the next step. Then we'll wrap it in brick and put the window systems in. But making good progress. The rain's hindering some things, but they're utilizing good work days and weather they have on this project. Rain has put them behind schedule, so they're trying to utilize weekend work as much as they can to get back on schedule. We have sat down with them, analyze their schedule to look at ways we can get back on schedule, get back and make sure this edition's done for the start of school. Some progress pictures. You can just see what I was describing, that CMU's going up to the second floor on this Media Center portion, which is the top left picture. This is a picture down from the intersection of the drive in the front of the school. The classroom wings already going up to the roof level. So mainly focused on that block work right now, and then MEP rough end. The next phase at Cahaba Heights is the new carpool traffic loop, new parking areas, and relocation of the playground. This project bid this past month had a construction budget of $2.2 million funds available that was allotted for this project. Base bid came in at $1.792 million. So we've vetted with the bidder that they're comfortable with their bid, talked to them, they're comfortable with the schedule, they're comfortable with everything in their bid. So we are recommending award of that bid and contract tonight to the low bidder. And then assuming that gets awarded tonight, they'll start construction around the 1st of April as soon as that contract can be fully executed. At Elementary West, which is right over here, you probably saw as you walked in, structural steel's the big thing going on right now. They've made a lot of progress on that over the past month. That should be nearing completion in the next week or two. And then they'll start metal decking to pour their slab for what will be the cafeteria. And then they'll go up with block from there to put the roof on. So the focus right now is just structural steel and wrapping the kitchen. If you drive over on the park side, you'll see they're wrapping it with brick right now. A few pictures of that. You've seen it out here. They're just working on the structural steel columns and beams that will support the second floor slab or the main level slab of that building. At Berry, we have one package that's already started and is ongoing. That's an early site and demolition package. They've done a lot of their grading work. They're doing mass grading right now. They're installing their storm, getting ready to take down the old metal building in the back that we talked about that housed the old gym and the old band room. They've been doing some utility capping, getting the utilities out of the way to take that building down, so that'll be coming down next week. They're starting clearing and grubbing around the site, then they'll just do site utilities, and that's a May finish project to start prior to the building package. So doing good on on that project to be ready in time for the building package. A few pictures of the site, just a lot of dirt, a lot of earth moving. Not the most glamorous project. From another package at Berry there is some existing asbestos in that building. It was never abated. Has always been safe because it's been sealed and encapsulated over the years, but we're about to do a lot of interior renovations to that building, so we felt all that asbestos needs to be abated right now. So we did an early package prior to the building package on this one as well, and broke this out so that this building can be completely abated prior to the building package started. That project was bid this past month as well. Had a $220,000 budget allotted for it. Bid came in at $175,000, so under budget on it. Had a good bid pool on that. Have talked with them, they're comfortable with their bid, so they're ready to start whenever. So we are recommending an award on that contract as well. That's it for ongoing construction projects or projects about to start, assuming the board awards these two contracts tonight. This abatement contract will start in just a few weeks. And the building package is in progress of design, hoping for late March, early April finish for design, and then that building package will start up right on schedule behind the site and demo package finish. Any questions?
How disruptive is the carpool thing at how high it's gonna be?
We have phased it, and we can look at that. We phased it, so there's two phases to this project that we've built within the contract and the schedule. And that's a first phase that's on the south end of the site, closest to the new gym. And our thought is, the plan is 1st of April, assuming awarded tonight, they start and they're just doing clearing and grading work within the wooded areas of the carpool. So it won't affect carpool until school is over. Now, as soon as we can get carpool, if we can get it early, that's great, but right now, contractually, they're waiting till the end of school to get into the existing carpool area. So they'll just be focused on grading in those wooded areas. As soon as carpool is over, school lets out, they'll move into the carpool areas, get it done by the end of summer. The next phase of this project is the drive and parking on the north end by the addition that's going on. That won't start until that addition is finished, with that addition being the critical component for this next school year.
On the carpool side of things, that's the access to the ball fields behind, correct?
That's right. So we go towards Parks and Rec. Okay, I've already talked to them. So we've worked with them, and the phasing was kind of a result of that, as well as these ongoing projects. We didn't want to get in the project on the north end's way as they're trying to finish up. We didn't want any delays where those two contractors are working in the same area, but also while we're working on the south end, access will be cut off at some point, but we've already talked with Parks and Rec. They're okay with that. We'll use the north access, and then once south's done, we'll flip-flop. Yeah. All right, that's it. That's my
Next item on our agenda is the 2017 audit report. Jason Harp, sharing that with us. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jason Harp. I have Courtney Brown and Catherine Cannon with me, and we will go through each page of this entire. If you think that's bad, this will probably make that look fun. But anyway, what I'd like to do is briefly go over the financial statements, go through a couple of items, and certainly entertain any questions that you might have. And I know each year as we flip through, forgive me for a lot of flipping, but as we know, government financial statements are kind of cumbersome, and there's several sets of statements, a lot of footnotes, and then a single audit report in the back. But the most important thing is if you'll flip to the tab that says report, behind this tab is our opinion on the financial statements, and we're issuing an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion that we can issue on the financial statements of the board. That's certainly what you would expect, and this letter goes through some of the items that we go through with the financial statement audit and discusses that. But mainly the big takeaway from this is an unmodified opinion, which is certainly what you would want in your financial statement audit. If you'll flip to page 5, and I know in prior years it's unique with governments because we have two types of accounting going on. We have accounting that we call full accrual accounting, that's like any kind of a business, Coca-Cola or General Electric, or just stuff that we're commercial business that we're used to. And then we have the other form that you hear a lot, general fund accounting. So that's a little bit different measurement, but on page 5 is the normal balance sheet like you would have at just a commercial entity. So we've got all of our assets, all of our liabilities on, and each year I'll point this out. If you go to actually the page 5, the numbered page is the liability side, and about halfway down you'll see a net pension liability. And I think every year I mention that, and it's a $70 million net pension liability, which represents the difference between investments we have down at the RSA that's been allocated to us and long-term liabilities for pension funding. That's that difference, but it will be funded over a long period of time. And what we're also looking at with this $70 million is a 2016 number because their actuarial reports are 1 year behind. So knowing that 17 was a really good year of returns for investments, this probably will go down next year, you know, as far as that goes, I hope. So now the other unusual thing, and you may be aware of this, I think I mentioned it last year, is the RSA has lowered their discount and expected rate of return from 8% to 7.75%. And just that slight, small 0.25% change can have a big impact on this liability over that 30 or long-term time. So that's caused an increase also. They're just being more conservative. Since the late 70s, they've generally always returned more than 8%, but they're just being conservative with their number, which I think is probably a prudent thing to do. Next year, we'll be going through this same exercise with your other post-employment benefits, which would be healthcare costs to retirees, PEO. So they're going to do the same thing, the RSA, that they did on pensions. They're going to say this is your portion of the unfunded other post-employment benefit for retirees. We'll get that number and book that liability and book that the same way. Unfortunately, we really not going to know that until next year after they do their computation, so it's a little hard to estimate what that will be. But as with the pensions, everybody across the country will do it at the same time, so it's not something unique to Vestavia. So everybody will implement that same new accounting standard at once. So, you know, kind of know that's coming, and debt agencies will have that factored into any kind of ratings or anything else. On page 9, this is back to our fund income statement. We hear Greg probably talk about this every month of where we stand with fund balance and our 30-day fund balance reserve. I've calculated at 9/30/2017, we probably have around 196 days so in our general fund balance, so obviously very healthy. So that's, you know, way more than what we need. So from a health standpoint, that's really good. Your capital projects fund, you'll notice obviously we've had activity going on in that over the past year where we've all buried and we're doing, you know, classroom upgrades, cafeteria upgrades. About $11 million, well, $11 million for Barry, and then another about $11 million of those upgrades going on with capital outlay. So that's really what the main activity is in that column. On page 26 in the footnotes, and I promise I would never make anybody read footnotes to government financial statements, but this is interesting, and back to what I was discussing with your net pension liability. This is a good little chart in the middle of the page of how sensitive that is, a 1% increase and decrease is in your rate of return and discount rate in the computation of that liability. So you can see 1% over time could really have a big impact. So that's why we're pulling hard to make sure our investments, you know, end out in a positive way, because a small thing can impact that really in a big amount. And one thing I try to do every year that I want to tell you something new that I didn't tell you last year, and I don't recall really going over auditing federal awards in detail. I know we talked about, clearly we've got special ed, child nutrition, but you know, the focus of a financial statement audit is more numbers. There is some internal control work that we do, and we do some reporting on that, but in any federal award or single audit that we call it, our focus in that is more of a compliance, you know, and controls over compliance. And the numbers are important, but we're really aiming at that control standpoint. And if you'll turn to page 39, we always have a schedule in the report of what the federal awards expenditures were. So this is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. This is a pretty important document as far as what we call a single audit or audit of federal awards goes. And you'll see you're in a unique situation. It seems like about every 5 years, the threshold for the numbers that we need to do your single audit is changing. Probably 10 years ago, it was 350, threshold of 350, then it bumped up to 500,000, and now we're up to 750,000. And in a lot of the ways that we select the programs to be audited every year is based on risk and dollar amount. So with the way Vestavia's works, you can see that your child nutrition is $626,000, which is slightly below the 750, but in total you've got $2 million, so you're always going to have a single audit. But it affects the way we select annually our federal awards to be audited. And this year we ended up auditing a special IDEA, special ed, and child nutrition both. So you really have basically almost the entire amount was covered in our single audit procedures. So that's sort of what we're going through annually as we do these federal award audits, is compliance over controls and compliance. And when I'm talking about controls or any internal control, it's any procedure you have in place to detect and prevent an error. It's just that simple. So a purchase order would be an internal control. You approving a contract as the board to buy a bill, that's an internal control. The bank reconciliation is an internal control, so you can kind of go down through that process. So that's what we do. We do a lot of sampling. There again, our focus, since it's so precise on controls, there is no materiality. So we're really looking at anything, you know, that we find related to any kind of control issues. And because of that, it's common to find some type of a control issue because that precision is so small on that. And you'll see this year we have several things in child nutrition related to payroll that we discovered in our testing. Now, the dollar amounts of that are very, very low, but it just was an issue that I don't feel like it's anything that's uncommon that we do find when we do child nutrition audits. So it was an issue over pay and time and recording, payroll back and forth between, certain, I guess, our departments that we don't feel it's been corrected or being in the process of being corrected, and I don't think it's anything systemic. So, but we've got the detail of that in the back. The dollar amounts were very low, so there's really no, finding as far as any dollar amounts go. It's mostly just issues related to payroll. The reason that's common in child nutrition is, the makeup of your employees over that, is probably not necessarily full-time. There's a lot of individual contracts related to those employees. There's timesheets that are different than just, a normal salary. So you get into a lot more moving parts related to a child nutrition program than you may Title I or IDEA or other types of federal awards programs like that. So anyway, that's also in the report with the detail related to that. But I think I've given you about a 5-minute spiel on auditing federal awards that you might spend a week discussing if you really wanted to. But I do think that's important for you to understand that auditing process and what all goes on. Like anything, and Greg will tell you, over the past 10 years, that has gotten way, way, way more complicated, and the rules have exploded over the past 10 years related to auditing federal awards. They really put a big focus on that. So the precision of that's gotten smaller and smaller and smaller as time moves on as far as auditing federal awards go. I think that's everything I wanted to discuss. Courtney's got a few things that are required communications, and then I'll certainly take any questions after that, or we can go ahead now.
Okay. So before we leave this, this finding does not in any way impact our funding.
No.
Right, on that, and we would still remain a low-risk auditee, or not?
It's a significant deficiency. It's not a material weakness, so I don't know that that's going to affect your high risk next year. You were this year because we had a finding 2 years ago, so that's another thing, we get into coverage amounts because of that, not to get into too much detail. So that's another reason we had to do the two programs to make sure we met our 40% coverage. But I don't think going forward that's going to affect. Catherine's our single audit specialist, so she can get into uniform guidance and Code of Federal Regulations, in Section 200, probably a little bit more detailed than I can. So.
Right, I just wanted to add, because the amounts were very minimal, and we also had a mitigating control over payroll, particularly with hourly employees, because there is a heavy review over your hours from one pay period compared to the prior period. That is kind of a check of reasonableness. It's not precise, but it would detect any material issue before it was too late. So that's why we were able to say this is a significant deficiency rather than material weakness, and that does have implications in terms of how we risk.
Which is exactly what you want, is to make sure, and Greg's done good with that, of having some other mitigating control in place to do a final catch before something gets really out of hand, and that's what you have. So.
And the corrective action plan has been implemented?
Yes, actually, the day they told me about it, it was implemented.
This particular area of payroll seems to give troubles to school boards, and it is because of the nature of those employees where they tend to work more hours than their contract and they can be paid for those extra hours, and that can lead to some clerical errors too. They tend to bounce around their contracts throughout the year because you approve those, so you've seen them as well. And so I guess I've seen, it just seems that in the last year and a half I keep stumbling on this as we go. So I don't think it's any issue that would raise concerns about all of your payroll. It seems to be specific to hourly employees and maybe specifically just employee employees, but just because we've seen this from time to time, it's actually with places that had a harder time with it, I've been telling them you really need to start doing your own self-audits over this particular area. There is a lot of manual intervention with this area, and I think your plan of action is going to help have a second set of eyes in the cases where you have to manually change something. Because a teacher, you set them up once a year and then it's pretty regular. So it's just thinking about when do you have these changes for a CMP employee and see that there's a second set of eyes to make sure those things are done correctly.
Thank you.
We do have something in place currently and going forward.
Like I said, from the day they notified me of the error, it was a quick and easy fix, so it's been taken care of.
Real quick, in the back of your binder, you have a tab called Required Communications. And I'm not going to go over all of this, but professional standards require that we communicate certain information related to our audit. And starting on page 54, it's just lists matters that we would need to communicate to you, such as the significant accounting policies used by the board, if we had any disagreements with management or any difficulties in our audit, and we did not, but there's a lot of other things there that you can read for yourself.
Certainly will answer any more questions. I think this is Mr. Maynard's swan song audit, so I would like to thank him for all the years that he's helped us get through. Not that he's not a very young man, but I think when we started out, we were at Gadsby, you know, that's what I live in. Accounting pronouncement, probably what, 10? We're probably up to, we're up to 87 as of the beginning of February, which really governs this whole book. So he's been through many, many, many changes, so we certainly appreciate all his hard work over the years.
It has affected me more than it has him.
Anyway, we'd like to thank him and his whole staff for everything they do to help us get in and get what we need and get out of time. So, thank you, Greg.
Greg, does the board need to accept the audit report formally?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, do I hear a motion to accept the 2017 audit report as submitted? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next two items on the agenda relate to the school restructuring plan that the board adopted back in December. You know, that was right before winter break, and not long after we got back from winter break, we started working toward planning for the transition to the ninth grade center and also to the K-5 structure throughout the school system. And tonight, I really just want to let you know that has gone on and share with you what we've shared with Dr. Freeman. The first step in planning for those two transitions is simply to get a list of everything that will need to be done. And the way we went about that in both cases, ninth grade center and K-5, is to start with our faculties and invite them to help us think of every single thing from their perspective that they can think of that would need to be attended to. Things as simple as, how is all my stuff going to get moved from Gazettes to Mary, which is very important to teachers, to really big things, like curriculum instruction and those kinds of things. Then, of course, the principals have their own perspective on all the things that will need to be done, as do certain central office staff. So all those groups were involved in that process, and just to give you a sense of the level of detail, these are some of the pages from the ninth grade center planning, so you can see there's a whole list of things under staffing. Occasionally you may see one that's already been addressed. But if you back up just a little bit, under administration, determine the administrative team, that's been done. So some of these things we've already acted on. For the most part, they're things that will need to be done. So it'll just scroll through those. You can see there's a whole set under extracurricular, student life, how will the ninth grade center tie into the overall high school experience. Things that we're calling related to vision and communication. What is the vision for that center and how's that going to be communicated to various stakeholders? A lot of things under fixtures, facilities, equipment, and technology. Some of them by specific subject areas. And then programmatic needs, how do we provide the same quality of instruction and academic opportunities at the ninth grade center that students have traditionally gotten at the high school, a lot of scheduling issues. So again, just want to let the board and the community know that this planning's underway. It's 18 months away, but it's 18 months from implementation, but the planning's already underway. So this has been handed off to Dr. Freeman. Basically, so here's all the stuff that's got to be done. Go get them, Dr. Freeman. So there's a similar companion piece for K-5, same process, and all faculties, administrators, and Clint will give you an idea of that one also. So again, just to make you aware that that's been going on, and kind of the first step in that planning process. You can see the level of detail. Student cumulative folders will need to be color-coded. That's the level of details being brought to this discussion. I commend our teachers and administrators and principals for really, I think, doing a very thorough job in anticipating all the different issues that have to be addressed. And again, the good news is we've got 18 months to figure this out and attack it in an orderly way. Also, at the end of each one, you can see down here at the end, we asked the groups to indicate to Dr. Freeman at least a rough chronology of which things need to come first, and then those things that will come more toward the end of that planning process. So those have been handed over to him, and he'll take it from there. So be glad to entertain any questions that you might have about that. Okay. Also, just want to assure the board and the community that the planning for the superintendent transition is underway and is going well. Dr. Freeman is spending as much time as he can in our school system, and that time is being driven by what we've identified for him, the board and I, as the priorities for the next 2 years in the school system, and that's driving his time in the school system. Every time he comes, he picks off a certain number of items from those priorities and says, let's focus on these. And so then the appropriate administrators and I plan for those visits and try to do everything we can to help him understand exactly what those priorities mean and what's involved in them. He's going to be spending the next 2 days in the school system meeting with principals individually to talk about personnel and staffing needs for next school year. So he's not on the clock yet. That'll be March the 12th. But he's really working hard to understand exactly what's going to be on his plate. It's a very large plate. That plate is running over on the side, but he's digging right in. You know, he'll tell me, yeah, over the weekend, I read such and such a document just to be sure I have that in my understanding. So he's working very hard to make that transition, and I'm confident it's going to be a very smooth one. Any questions? Financial statement?
All right, the financial information in your packet tonight is for the month of January. Right now, local revenues, which is mainly our ad valorem, is at 70% of what our budget is. Last year, we were at 65%. I'd like to report as of today, we've collected $31.2 million of ad valorem. We had budgeted just over 35 million, so we have 4.3 million basically left to collect between now and the end of September. And I see no reason why we shouldn't hit that goal. On the expenditure side, current expenditures, 35% of budget. Last year they were 33% of budget. We're a little bit further along, but we've had budget amendment that we did just last month to increase our spending in the areas of technology. So that plays into part of it. All accounts have been reconciled, and that's all I have to report. Any questions?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the financial report.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the financial statements for January 2018 as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is several consent items. I recommend board approval of these, which consist of 2 overnight trip requests and 1 request to dispose of surplus property.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the consent items as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve? And second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we have several items of business. The first 2 Brenda alluded to earlier, a bid for the asbestos abatement at Berry, and then also the bid on the new parking and access drive at Cava Heights. So, Brenda, you have any comments about that, or just need to respond to questions?
Yeah, nothing I haven't already stated. Bids were both under budget, under funds available. We talked with both bidders, low bidders, vetted with them, went through the bid with them, talked schedule. They were all comfortable with moving forward with the contract.
So the first would be the recommendation to accept the bid and award the contract for asbestos abatement for Berry to Lakeshore Environmental Contractors in the amount of $174,390.
The superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the low bid and the contract with Lakeshore Environmental Contractors as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second? Second. Any discussion, questions for Brenda? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is the awarding the contract for the new parking and access drive at Cava Heights Elementary. We recommend approval of the bid from Tortorici Construction, awarding the contract in the amount of $1,792,105.
All right, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the bid and the contract with Tortorici Construction as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second? Is there any discussion on that? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is one that the board first took up about a month ago. And it's interesting that since that first discussion of strengthening our policy on harassment, violence, and threats of violence, that there's been another tragic instance of school violence in Florida, as we all know. And I think as those have happened over the years, many times there seems to be a story there somewhere of a student who felt as if he were being harassed or bullied. And that obviously does not excuse violence in any way, but it's a concern on many levels. First of all, we want all of our students to be comfortable in school and be free to learn without any distraction. But also it does become a safety issue to be sure that our students do feel comfortable, if there's not anger or something that would provoke them to harm someone else. So I think taking up this policy tonight is certainly very timely, even more so than it was when we first started a month ago. We again discussed it earlier, but the real change in the policy is to make it clear that there is no limit to the basis for unacceptable behavior. Any behavior that is harassment or violence or threat of violence is unacceptable. And the reason that's cited why one student was acting that way toward another is really irrelevant. The behavior itself is what we're going to be very, very clear with our students. Is just unacceptable and will not be tolerated in any way. So we think these revisions to the policy make that clear. And then that becomes the basis for our communication to students, and it becomes our basis for consequences if students do violate that policy. So I recommend adoption of the policy as it's presented to you.
All right, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the revised policy 6.24 as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion or questions on the policy? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is personnel. I recommend board approval for the personnel actions that are reflected in your agenda.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation, the board approve the personnel actions as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, before we take public comments tonight, I'd like to make a few comments. As Dr. Mason explained, Dr. Freeman will officially start with us on the 12th. And of course, that means that Dr. Mason will be leaving us. So it's with some sadness that we end his last meeting with us tonight. These past 6 months have been an important time for our system, and the work that Dr. Mason has done for us has been invaluable. When David and I met with Charles to talk about the possibility of him becoming our interim superintendent, we knew that he had the skill set and the experience we needed, but we've also learned that he's an extraordinary leader and a thoughtful administrator and a man of great character. So it was our good fortune that he accepted the position, and words cannot express how grateful we are that he did. Charles, you have worked tirelessly to not just keep us on course, but to advance all the projects we've had in process and to lay the foundation for a smooth transition. So here is our traditional parting gift of a paperweight, which isn't much, but we sincerely hope it will remind you of your time with us, and even more than that, that it'll be fond memories for you, as it certainly will be for us. So again, we thank you and we'll miss you. So not to go on too long, if the board member would like
No, he was leaving. He's been so active. And a second one, Nancy said that Dr. Mason has not been the interim that I expected. I didn't know him, but I sort of expected him to sit around and read ESPN a lot, stamp some things, and move along. But he's been very active and has done a fantastic job in moving us through these projects and just being a great leader. And sincerely appreciate that. I know the community and the staff does as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to say that too, is that, lots of times the interim tag means placeholder, right? I'm just gonna kind of placeholder this thing and we'll just kind of ride it out, not make any waves or whatever. And, the fact that you took on big strategic initiatives and laid a great foundation and moved us through and set an example for how to engage the community and to communicate effectively and regularly, and we just couldn't be more thankful and grateful for what you've done for us. Thank you. Thank you.
And on behalf of the administrative team, the central office staff, the principals, we really want to thank you for the work that you have done, how you've led us. And here are some gift cards for some ways to spend your time, because you'll wonder how you'll ever spend your time. Opportunities to maybe spend some time with your family in the movies or having dinner. So
Great.
thank you so
Terrific.
much.
Thank you. Let me just say that I appreciate the opportunity. My wife and I went to the Dinner and Diamonds event last weekend, and we were kind of laughing that we've been invited every year and we've never gone because we said we really don't know anybody. So this year we figured at least we might know a few people, so we did go and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's been really the best part. As I told the administrators the other day, when I came, I knew 3, maybe, administrators that I'd worked with previously. Otherwise, everybody was absolutely new to me. And that's been the best part, is getting to know each of you, getting to know the administrators, other employees in the system. That's just been a real pleasure for me. The work's been fun, most days. And the 6 months has gone by very, very quickly, most days. And so I appreciate the opportunity. And I feel like as a community member, I understand even more now than I did before what a great school system this is, how great that is for the community, and oh, by the way, how great that is for my 2 grandchildren. So I walk away with a tremendous appreciation for just what a treasure the school system is to this community, and I appreciate the opportunity for all of that. Thank you.
One last thing doesn't warrant mentioning that Nancy and I had a good laugh that where she and I went to meet Dr. Mason the first time was at the Mountain Brook Board of Education. Dickie Barlow let us use his office to meet. And as I parked and we're walking up, we noticed it's the Charles Mason building. It's the Mountain Brook Board of Education. So, like, wow, no wonder we could get a room over here.
All right, our last order of business will be to invite public comment. We ask that you please limit your comments to agenda items and that you come to the podium and state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible. Do you have any? All right, there being no further business to come before this board, we stand adjourned.